Hello and welcome. It's quite evident to us now that patients of COVID-19 who have recovered continue to display symptoms of illnesses beyond what was originally expected or projected. The problem, therefore, is that this disease is more inexplicable than we ever thought before. So what happens? Why is it that COVID-19 is affecting parts of the body beyond what we thought it would, which is, for example, the lungs or the respiratory tract? And what happens to someone who has been through this? Well, let's find out from someone who has experienced it, and not just experienced it, but chronicled his recovery almost line by line in the time period that he went through this very, very debilitating period. I'm now joined by Dr. Paul Garner, Professor, Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine and a Director at the Center for Evidence Synthesis in Global Health. Dr. Garner actually fell ill on the 19th of March thanks to COVID-19, but has then subsequently been chronicling his recovery in the British Medical Journal. Dr. Garner, thank you very much for joining with us. So first question, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling a little bit better than I have done in the past. I feel quite tired. I've rested for this, and I'm pleased to be talking to you, sir. Thank you for asking.
Right. So tell us, you contracted COVID on the 19th of March, and you've described in the British Medical Journal blog how you've the various phases of recovery. Now, did you go to a hospital, or were you at home? How were you being treated?
So in the UK, the policy was that if you were if at all possible, you were nursed at home. You managed yourself at home. So I actually didn't think I was very unwell to begin with, and really I thought that it was just going to be a mild illness. I thought it would just go away. And actually it developed into quite a severe illness for a few days, when I really felt quite breathless, and there were times when I actually thought that my days were over. I mean, it really was a horrible sensation. However, the hospitals at the time, there was no reason to go to the hospital at that time. So I just stayed in bed at home. There were other doctors in the house, and they were keeping a close eye on me. I had shortness of breath, but I wasn't. My oxygen saturation from my watch showed that I wasn't desaturating. But I think there's quite a lot of people in my situation having what's mild and what's moderate illness. We haven't been so severely unwell that we've needed to be admitted to hospital. We've nursed ourselves at home, but we do not fit into what we were told the illness would be like. In other words, it would last for 14 days. And here I am at over 120 days, still unwell. But the early part of the illness really was with repeated bouts of feeling hot. I wasn't febrile, but feeling absolutely dreadful. It would come out from nowhere. I've said it was like being hit over the head by a cricket bat. You would be absolutely floored for days on end. And that went on for about 12 weeks. I'd have time in between when I felt quite good and I was articulate and I could talk on the phone and do little bits of work around the house. So that was the first part of the illness. And then really the second part up until now has been this tremendous fatigue, where I actually have to be very careful about not overdoing it. I have to be careful about how much exercise I take. I take short walks. I don't go too far. And with interviews and with talking with work, I limit the amount of time because of this brain fog. But this is so common. This is so common. There are so many people that I read about online on Facebook pages that go through this very debilitating illness.
Right. And a lot of people have been reaching out to you as well and sharing their experiences. So what is this telling you about the trajectory of this virus and this disease, Dr. Garner, from what you know so far?
All I know is that this may be for some people a relatively minor infection, but for some people it can lead them to be admitted to hospital. Some people die, but there's a large group of people that are unwell for a longer period of time, and they tend to be a little bit hidden. So I'm not sure about what's happening in your own country at the moment, but I imagine that there will be people in my position that have an illness that comes and goes, and has symptoms that people don't always recognize as being symptoms of illness. They are so vague sometimes that people think that the patients are making it up. So I myself have not suffered from this, but some people have problems with their heart rate going up very high. It's a recognized problem with fatigue. And those people are going to doctors in the UK, and these doctors are diagnosing them with anxiety. And these people know what's happening to them. They have their heart rate goes up to 140, 150 while they're just outside walking in the street. So what I think is that there's a tremendous varied burden of illness. So your clinicians that you've discussed things with will have been seen and describing perhaps things that they've seen in hospitals, and people that have been so severely unwell that they've had to go to hospital. But there's a large group of people that will have been ill at home with an illness that seems very difficult to understand, actually. I mean, I'm a professor in infectious diseases and evidence-based medicine, and I found it hard to work out what's happening to me. And so for other people, it must be very hard. And I've actually spoken to people that thought that they had a mental breakdown. That the symptoms were so strange that they thought that they were having a mental disease had come on. And it's also it makes you very lonely. You know, it's a lonely disease to be feeling these things and thinking that you're different to everybody else. So it's the morbidity is large, and one of the other things that happens when people have fatigue, which is the particular syndrome I've got, is that if you overdo it, if you do too much, if you walk too far, if you do too much mental exercise, too much on the computer, it kicks you back. It kicks you back viciously. So I've gone out on a short bicycle ride and my heart rate went up, and come back home, and I was back in bed for 2 days because I'd overdone it. And lots of people don't understand that when you're fatigued like this, it's very important not to push through because it can make you ill again.
Right, and I'm going to come back to that as well in terms of what you feel people should do or not do even as they recover from COVID.
Okay.
But what was the trigger for you to start chronicling your own progress and your own recovery?
Well, I wanted to understand the disease, and I think with something like this, if you do not write it down, you actually forget quite quickly what has happened to you. And if you want to see yourself get better or document where it's going, you have to write these things down, because you cannot remember it on a day-to-day basis. And also because the disease is a very troubling disease. It it interferes with your memory and it interferes with your thinking, and so writing it down helped me understand and process what I was going through. So, and I'm a researcher, so you'd expect me to at least chronicle it in order to understand it.
Right, and you, thanks to your focus on tropical diseases, have worked on malaria and tuberculosis, which we obviously see lots of in these parts. Are you seeing any commonality, any similarity between the way COVID is manifesting itself and all the diseases that you are or have studied in the past?
Well, it is weirder than any disease I've ever come across, and it's gone on for longer than any disease I've had. I mean, in malaria, for example, it's very common for Westerners to think that malaria is just an acute disease. I've experienced malaria because I've lived in malarious areas and had chronic malaria. I understand malaria is a chronic remitting disease that comes and goes. And I've been really quite unwell with malaria, but this is such an odd disease with so many unexpected turns. It's been quite terrifying in a way. I've had dengue fever as well, and it's been somewhat similar, but it's the waves of suddenly coming out from nowhere that make this a very different kind of infection, a very frightening infection for people.
Right. So, and if you were to look ahead, and how do you see from your own experience and what you're looking around you, how do you see this disease playing out? What do you see its path forward as?
I think it's going to be around for a long time. You know, one may there's wishful thinking among certain prominent politicians that it will just evaporate, but I honestly think we need to start working out how we live with this in the medium to the long term, and it means changing our lives in various ways, and that has started happening, and it's often said that this disease is a great revealer, and it does show problems with equity and problems with disadvantaged groups of people. You're talking to me here, and I've had the privilege, I'm a privileged person. I am able to step back from my work for a little while. My work is understanding. I am not forced into positions where, but for poorer people, it really does hammer everyone hard, but shows up these inequities in our society.
Right. To come back to your journal, was there any point where you felt you were literally writing maybe your last few words, but you continued to write it, and then what made you do so?
So it was early on when I didn't really understand what the illness was. I was just writing a few words saying I feel a little bit muggy today, I've got a bit of a headache, and it was about on day 5 that I suddenly felt awful and with a chest pain, and my heart was racing, and I'd talked with the doctors in the house about whether myocarditis, infection of the heart, was part of the illness, because I'd got these odd sensations in my chest and a slight cough, and I went to bed and actually thought at that stage, as all the energy drained out of me, I thought I was dying, and luckily I wasn't, and it was very severe fatigue coupled with these heart sensations. But after that, it became a remitting illness. You know, I'd be all right, I'd be lucid for a day or two and then be back in bed for a couple of days. So it wasn't as if I should have been in hospital. So I wasn't dreadfully unwell subsequent to that. I was just incapacitated, just constantly being tripped up by the virus. It was constantly stopping me doing things or making me go back to bed with headaches or feeling awful.
Right. I mean, this is obviously very useful, and thank you for sharing very candidly what you've been through. So, what are the 2 or 3 things that you would now recommend or suggest to people who are recovering? And maybe some people would have just had minor brushes with the virus, some not so, or more, as you mentioned, debilitating encounters. But are there a couple of things that people should be doing and be aware of very consciously, so as to not maybe go through what you've gone through and so well chronicled?
I would believe what is happening to you. The symptoms you're getting are very real, no matter how strange they are. It's not you going mad. The illness really does cause a lot of strange sensations because of its, probably through its infection in the head. So believe what's happening to you. Do not push through the fatigue. Do not think that the way to cure this or to get better is to push yourself hard, because that will make you iller. And the third thing is be kind to yourself, and you have to convalesce. It's hard for people. I know people have jobs. I know people have obligations, but you need to explain it to the people around you, and your body needs time to recover.
Right. Dr. Paul Garner, thank you very much for speaking with us. Thank you for sharing your experience, and do wish you all the very best as you continue to recover from this dreaded disease.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk with you. Thank you.
Thank you.